trust that lady. My name is King Ugatonton, and this is my channel about Pathfinder 2e. A bunch of TTRPG YouTubers set up an event to have a bunch of other TTRPG YouTubers make a 5-room dungeon, and then put them all together in a big playlist, so it feels like you're fingering through a bunch of little RPG modules. Dungeon Jam! My entry to the Dungeon Jam is Don't Trust That Lady. I made it level 1 for Pathfinder 2e, and the vibe inspiration was Legend of Zelda. A 5-room dungeon follows a pattern, and each room isn't necessarily a room, it's just like an encounter or a nodule of story. Like in mine, you start in a seaside town full of tourists, and there's a lady in scarves begging for someone to take her quest, but all of the town guards and tourists tell you not to trust her. But you're a level 1 adventurer desperate for quests. She tells you that her friends have been captured in another world, and she gives you a magic conch with instructions on how to get there. So you take a rowboat and enter a weird cave where there's a shrine. The first room of a 5-room dungeon is the Guardian, or a reason that nobody else has entered the dungeon, and in this case it's because you need to trust the lady and get that magic conch. You play the conch like a horn and at the shrine, and you shrink down to 5 inches tall, and then you can fit through a tiny crack in the door and enter a strange tiny coliseum. The second room of the dungeon is supposed to be the opposite of the first room. Like if the first room was a fight, this is a puzzle, or if it was a puzzle, this is a fight. So naturally, you fight a perfectly normal-sized crab that's a big challenge now that you're 5 inches tall. You rescue a tiny creature named Bosa, who's a Latilian, a tiny species of humanoids. Now the third room. Something happens to make things more difficult than you thought. That's when Bosa brings you through another crack in the wall to the Latilian Kingdom, a world inside the cave and built out of stolen human trinkets. He explains to control the weather they employ weather wizards, but one went evil and took over the kingdom. Then the evil wizard creates a giant rain cloud and floods the kingdom because he's a jerk. You need to save as many civilians as you can. The fourth room of the dungeon is the boss. Once you've saved the civilians, you go outside where a sword is embedded in the cave wall and fight the wizard on the blade, and you win. Then the fifth room is the reveal or treasure. That's when the woman in scarves comes back and reveals she was the original princess of the kingdom, who was exiled when the wizard took over, and they all lived happily ever after. And the reason nobody trusted her is because the town struck a deal with the wizard, but that's a story for another day. Check out a link for this dungeon in the description, and check out this playlist for all the other dungeons in the Dungeon Jam. And thanks to those YouTubers that put it together. You know, I have another dungeon too, which is in a much more text-based style, but I'll be remaking that dungeon in this new format, so stay tuned.